The thing about thrift stores is that you never really know what you're going to find. Sometimes it's junk, sometimes it's treasure, and sometimes, if you're lucky, it's something that changes your whole life. Rachel didn't feel particularly lucky that day. Her car had broken down again. Her landlord was raising the rent, and she'd just realized her winter coat from last year had a rip in it that she couldn't ignore anymore. The cold was already creeping in, and October in Oregon doesn't mess around, so there she was, walking into the Goodwill on a gray Tuesday afternoon, hoping to find something decent for under $20. The store had that smell. You know the one. Sort of musty, sort of clean, sort of like 100 different lives all mixed together. Rachel headed straight to the back where they kept the coats and jackets. This time of year, the selection was usually pretty picked over. Everyone else had the same idea when the temperature dropped. She started flipping through hangers. There was a bright purple parka that looked like it belonged on a ski slope. A black peacoat with a stain on the sleeve. A leather jacket that was 3 sizes too big. Nothing was quite right. Then her hand landed on something different. It was a military-style jacket in a deep olive green. Not camouflage, just solid green. The kind of green you'd see in an old photograph. The fabric felt substantial, like it could actually keep the wind out. The buttons were brass and they had some weight to them when she ran her thumb over one. Rachel pulled it off the rack. It looked like something from another time. Well made, sturdy, the kind of thing people don't really make anymore because it costs too much to build stuff that actually lasts. She checked the price tag hanging from one of the buttons. $12.99. She actually looked around to see if anyone was watching, like this had to be a mistake. A jacket this nice for $13? She'd been prepared to spend $30 or $40. Without even thinking about it, she slipped it on right there between the racks. Sometimes clothes look great on the hanger but feel completely wrong when you put them on. Sleeves too short, shoulders too tight, weird bunching in weird places. But this jacket, it fit perfectly. She walked over to the mirror at the end of the aisle. The glass had a long crack running through it and the frame was chipped, but she could see herself well enough. The jacket looked good. Really good. It made her look put together, like someone who had their act figured out. Which was funny because she definitely didn't. Rachel turned to the side, checking how it looked from different angles. She zipped it up, then unzipped it. Popped the collar, then smoothed it back down. Yeah, this was the one. She was about to take it off and head to the checkout when she remembered something her grandmother used to say. Always check the pockets. You'd be surprised what people forget in pockets. Rachel stuck her hands in the 2 big pockets on the front. Empty. She checked the smaller ones near the waist. Nothing there either. She almost stopped there, but then she felt around the inside of the jacket. There was another pocket, hidden in the lining at chest height. The kind you might use for something important. Something you wanted to keep safe. Her fingers brushed against paper. She pulled it out slowly. It was a piece of notebook paper folded up small and tight. The paper had that old yellow tint to it and the edges were soft from being handled. You could tell it had been folded and unfolded many times over the years. Rachel opened it carefully, afraid it might fall apart. The handwriting was in blue ink, all loops and curves. The kind of cursive writing they used to teach in school but don't really anymore. Some of the letters had faded, but most of it was still readable. It said, "My dearest Robert, wear this and stay warm. Come home safe to me. All my love, Dorothy." November 1968. Rachel just stood there holding this note, feeling like she'd stumbled into someone else's private moment. November 1968. That was over 50 years ago, before Rachel was even born, before her parents were born. She read it again, slower this time. Come home safe to me. Those 5 words told a whole story. This wasn't just someone saying goodbye. This was someone terrified. Someone trying to wrap up all their love and hope into a piece of clothing. Because that's all they could do. The date made sense. 1968, that was Vietnam. Robert probably went to war and Dorothy gave him this jacket and this note. Did he come home? Did Dorothy get to see him again? How did this jacket end up here 50 years later, hanging on a rack at Goodwill? Rachel folded the note back up the way she'd found it and slipped it into the inside pocket. Her hand stayed there, pressed against the spot where the note had been hiding all this time. She looked at the jacket completely differently now. This wasn't just a good deal on a winter coat. This was someone's history, someone's love story. Dorothy had touched this fabric. Robert had worn this jacket. Maybe he'd reached into this exact pocket 100 times, feeling for this note when things got scary. An old guy shuffled past her, pulling a squeaky cart full of books. Rachel barely noticed. The smart thing would be to just buy the jacket and go home. Keep the note in a drawer somewhere or toss it if it felt weird having someone else's personal stuff. Most people would probably do that. The note had been forgotten for who knows how long. Nobody was looking for it. But Rachel couldn't shake the feeling that this note mattered. That somewhere out there, maybe Dorothy or Robert's kids or grandkids would want to know this existed, would want to hold this piece of their family story. She checked the collar of the jacket, pulling it down to look at the tag inside. Sometimes people wrote their names in their clothes back in the day. There it was, written in black permanent marker, faded but still visible. R. Hansen, R. Hansen. Robert Hansen. Probably. Rachel stood there in the middle of the thrift store, this jacket on her shoulders, this note in the pocket, and made a decision that even surprised her. She was going to find them. Or try to, at least. Find Robert or Dorothy or their family. Someone out there might want this note back. Someone might want to know that Dorothy's words survived all these years. It was probably crazy. Definitely a long shot. Robert Hansen wasn't exactly an uncommon name, and 50 years was a long time. He could have moved across the country, could have passed away decades ago. The whole family might be gone, but she had to try. She couldn't explain why exactly. It just felt important, like this note had found its way to her for a reason. Rachel walked up to the register. The cashier was scrolling through her phone, barely paying attention. "Just this?" the girl asked, scanning the tag. "Just this." $13.27. Rachel paid, took her change, and walked out into the parking lot. The wind hit her immediately, but the jacket kept it out. Warm, just like Dorothy promised Robert it would be. She sat in her car for a minute before starting it up, thinking about what to do next. She could post about it online, maybe. See if anyone recognized the names. Check old records somehow. It felt impossible. But then again, finding this note in the first place felt pretty impossible too. Rachel started the car and headed home. This old jacket wrapped around her, carrying a piece of someone else's love story, feeling like maybe, just maybe, she was supposed to find it. She didn't know it yet, but that little folded note was about to take her on a journey she'd never forget. Rachel couldn't stop thinking about the note. That night, she must have taken it out of the jacket pocket a dozen times, reading those same words over and over. "Come home safe to me." She kept the jacket on the back of her kitchen chair instead of hanging it in the closet. Every time she walked past it, she'd think about Robert and Dorothy. Were they young when he left? Did they have kids? Did he make it home from Vietnam? Or did Dorothy spend the rest of her life waiting for someone who never came back? The questions kept her up past midnight. By morning, Rachel had decided. She was going to do everything she could to find out what happened to them. Even if it led nowhere, at least she'd know she tried. She started with her phone, sitting at her kitchen table with a cup of coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. She typed Robert Hansen, Vietnam veteran, Oregon into Google. The results came back in half a second. Thousands of them. Turned out Robert Hansen was a pretty common name. There were obituaries, veteran registries, old newspaper articles, social media profiles. She scrolled through page after page, but nothing mentioned Dorothy. Nothing mentioned a jacket or a note from 1968. She tried a different search. Dorothy Hansen, Oregon, 1960s. Even more results, too many. It was like looking for a specific grain of sand on a beach. Rachel sat back and rubbed her eyes. This was going to be harder than she thought. She looked at the note again, studying every detail. The handwriting was careful, like Dorothy had taken her time with each word. The paper had been folded so many times that the creases were almost worn through. Robert must have carried this with him. Must have read it when he needed to remember why he had to survive. That thought hit Rachel hard. This wasn't just a piece of paper. This was a lifeline. She picked up her phone again and did something that felt a little crazy. She took a picture of the note, making sure the writing was clear and easy to read. Then she took a picture of the jacket, laid out flat so you could see the whole thing. The olive green fabric, the brass buttons, the red plaid lining. Rachel opened Facebook. She wasn't usually big on social media. Mostly she just scrolled through other people's posts without saying much. But today was different. She joined a group called Portland Area History and Memories, then another one called Oregon Veterans and Families, and one more called Vintage Military Collectibles. In each group, she posted the photos along with a message she'd typed and retyped probably 20 times. Found this note inside a vintage jacket at a thrift store here in Portland. It's dated November 1968 and signed by someone named Dorothy to someone named Robert Hansen. The jacket has R. Hansen written in the collar. I'm trying to find the family to return the note. If anyone knows anything or can share this, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you. She hit post before she could second-guess herself. Then she waited. For the first hour, nothing happened. Rachel cleaned her apartment, did laundry, tried to distract herself. She kept checking her phone every few minutes. Still nothing. Then around noon, the first comment came in. What a beautiful thing you're doing. I don't know the family, but sharing this in my groups. Good luck. Then another. My father served in Vietnam. I know how much something like this would mean to our family. I hope you find them. And another. Check the Vietnam Veterans Memorial database. They have names of people who served. Within an hour, her posts had been shared 30 times. Then 50. Then over 100. Her phone started buzzing constantly with notifications. People were commenting, sharing their own stories about finding old letters and photos. Some shared tips on how to search military records. Others just wanted to say they were rooting for her. Rachel sat on her couch, watching the numbers climb, and felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope, and also a weird sense of responsibility. All these people were invested now. They wanted her to find Robert and Dorothy just as much as she did. By evening, someone had tagged a local news blogger in the comments. You should cover this story, they wrote. Rachel's stomach flipped. She hadn't thought about it becoming actual news. She just wanted to find the family quietly, return the note, and that would be that. But the next morning, there it was. A small article on Portland Daily Blog. Woman searches for family of Vietnam veteran after finding note in thrift store jacket. They'd used her photos. They'd quoted her Facebook post. They'd even interviewed a local historian who talked about how many items from that era end up in thrift stores when elderly people downsize or pass away. Rachel's phone exploded. Friend requests. Messages from people she hadn't talked to in years. News stations asking if they could interview her. It was overwhelming. But buried in all those messages was one that made her heart stop. It was from someone named Patricia Vega. The message was short. I think that might be my uncle's jacket. Can you call me? Rachel's hands shook as she read it again. She looked at Patricia's profile. The woman was in her 50s, lived in Seattle, had photos of kids and grandkids. She looked normal. Real. Rachel clicked on the message box and typed back, Yes, absolutely. When's a good time? The response came within minutes. Now? Here's my number. Rachel had to walk around her apartment 3 times before she felt calm enough to make the call. She kept thinking about what she'd say. What if it wasn't the right family? What if she got this woman's hopes up for nothing? She dialed. Patricia answered on the second ring. Hello? Hi, this is Rachel. The one who found the jacket? Oh my God, yes, thank you for calling. Patricia's voice was thick with emotion. I saw your post this morning. Someone shared it in a group I'm in, and when I saw that note, I just knew. That's my Uncle Robert's handwriting on the collar. He always wrote his name in his clothes. Rachel sat down hard on her couch. Are you sure? I'm sure. And Dorothy was my aunt. My mom's sister. Was. Past tense. They're both gone, Patricia continued, her voice catching. Uncle Robert died about 5 years ago. Aunt Dorothy passed 2 years after him. Dementia. She didn't even remember him at the end, which just about killed the whole family. Rachel felt tears starting in her eyes. I'm so sorry. Don't be sorry. You just gave me something I didn't even know was lost. Patricia took a shaky breath. That jacket. He wore it everywhere, even after the war. It was like his security blanket or something. And that note. God, I remember Aunt Dorothy talking about writing it. She told me once that she stayed up all night before he shipped out, trying to find the right words. She wanted to give him something to hold on to. It worked, Rachel said softly. He kept it safe all these years. Can I see it? The note, I mean. In person? Patricia asked. I know this is a lot to ask. You don't know me. But I live in Seattle, and I could drive down this weekend. I'd really like to hold it, if that's okay. Rachel looked over at the jacket on her chair, the note safely tucked back in its pocket. Of course, she said. I'd really like to meet you too. They made plans to meet that Saturday at a coffee shop downtown. Patricia said she'd bring some photos, show Rachel who Robert and Dorothy really were. Tell her their story. After they hung up, Rachel just sat there for a long time holding her phone. She'd actually done it. In less than 24 hours, she'd found the family. Or they'd found her. However it worked. She thought about Patricia, about to see her aunt's handwriting again for the first time in who knows how long. Thought about how that note had traveled through time, through war, through decades of life, waiting for this moment. Rachel got up and walked over to the jacket. She touched it gently, like it was something sacred now. Because in a way, it was. Saturday couldn't come fast enough. Rachel got to the coffee shop 20 minutes early. She couldn't help it. She'd been too anxious to sit at home any longer. She picked a table near the window where she could watch for Patricia. The jacket was folded carefully in a canvas bag at her feet, the note still tucked in its inside pocket. She'd thought about framing it or putting it in a protective sleeve or something, but decided against it. It had survived 50 years in that pocket. It belonged there. Rachel ordered a coffee she didn't really want and checked her phone for the 100th time. No new messages. Patricia had said she'd be there by 2 o'clock. It was only 1:40. The minutes crawled by. At exactly 2, a woman walked through the door. She had short gray hair and kind eyes, and she was carrying a large photo album against her chest like it was precious cargo. She looked around the coffee shop, uncertain. Rachel stood up and waved. Patricia. The woman's face broke into a smile. Rachel. Oh my goodness, it's really you. They hugged like old friends, even though they'd never met before. When they pulled apart, Patricia's eyes were already wet. I can't believe this is happening, Patricia said, sitting down across from Rachel. I've been thinking about nothing else all week. Me too, Rachel admitted. Patricia set the photo album on the table but kept her hands on it, like she wasn't quite ready to open it yet. Is it here? The jacket? Rachel reached down and pulled out the bag. She took out the jacket slowly, unfolding it so Patricia could see it properly. The olive green fabric, the brass buttons, the red plaid lining. Patricia's hand went to her mouth. Oh God, that's it. That's really it. She reached out tentatively, then pulled back. Can I? Of course. It's yours. Well, your family's. Patricia took the jacket with both hands and held it up, looking at it like she was seeing a ghost. He wore this everywhere. I remember being a little girl and thinking my Uncle Robert looked so handsome in this jacket, like a movie star or something. She laughed, but it came out shaky. He wore it to my 8th birthday party. There's a picture somewhere. He was giving me a piggyback ride and I'm holding on to the collar. She brought the jacket close to her face for a moment, breathing in. I know this sounds crazy, but I swear it still smells like him. Like Old Spice and sawdust. He was a carpenter, you know. Built houses his whole life after the war. Rachel felt her throat tighten. She hadn't expected this to hit her so hard. This wasn't even her family. But watching Patricia hold that jacket, seeing what it meant to her, it was almost too much. The note, Patricia said quietly. Can I see it? Rachel nodded. It's in the inside pocket, right side. Patricia's hands trembled as she reached into the pocket. She pulled out the folded paper and just held it for a long moment before opening it. When she read it, the tears came for real. That's Aunt Dorothy's handwriting, she whispered. I'd know it anywhere. She used to send me birthday cards every year with writing just like this. Patricia traced the words with her finger. Come home safe to me. She told me about this note once, years ago. She said she must have rewritten it 20 times before she got it right. She wanted to tell him she loved him without making him more scared than he already was. Did he make it home? Rachel asked, even though she already knew the answer. He did. Patricia smiled through her tears. He came home in 1969. They picked him up at the airport, and Aunt Dorothy said she didn't let go of him for about 3 days straight. She laughed. They'd only been married 6 months before he shipped out. 6 months. Can you imagine? Getting married and then having to say goodbye like that. Patricia carefully folded the note back up and held it against her heart. Then she opened the photo album. I wanted you to see them, to know who they were. The first photo was a wedding picture. Black and white, a little faded. Dorothy was beautiful in a simple white dress, her hair done up in victory rolls. Robert stood next to her in a dark suit, his hair slicked bas. Kay grinning like he'd won the lottery. This was 1967, Patricia said. October. They got married at the courthouse because they couldn't afford a big wedding. Aunt Dorothy worked at a diner, and Uncle Robert was working construction. They were so young. 22 and 23. She turned the page. There was Robert in an army uniform, standing in front of a house. He looked thinner than in the wedding photo. Scared maybe, but trying not to show it. This was taken the day before he left, Patricia said. November 15th, 1968. That's my grandparents' house in the background. The next photo made Rachel's breath catch. It was Dorothy, looking at the camera with red, puffy eyes. She was holding something green. The jacket. My mom took this picture, Patricia said softly. She told me Dorothy cried for hours after Robert left. She didn't think she'd ever see him again. A lot of wives didn't, you know. Patricia flipped through more pages. There was Robert in Vietnam, standing with other soldiers. Robert reading a letter, probably one from Dorothy. Robert wearing the jacket even in the heat because it was the only piece of home he had. Then there were the homecoming photos. Robert stepping off a plane, scanning the crowd. Dorothy running toward him. The two of them holding each other in the middle of the airport while people walked around them. He wore the jacket home, Patricia said. You can see it in this one. Sure enough, there he was, that olive green jacket over his uniform, Dorothy's arms wrapped around him. The album continued. Robert and Dorothy at Christmas. Their first house. Dorothy pregnant with their first child. Robert holding a baby. More kids, birthday parties, Thanksgiving dinners, graduations, weddings. Through all of it, Robert wore that jacket. In the backyard, teaching his kids to play catch. Raking leaves. Building a treehouse. At his daughter's wedding. Holding his first grandchild. He never got rid of it, Patricia said, even when it got old and worn. Dorothy would offer to buy him a new jacket, and he'd say no. This one was lucky. This one brought him home. She turned to the last few pages. Robert as an old man, gray-haired and wrinkled, but still smiling that same smile from the wedding photo. Dorothy next to him, her hair white, holding his hand. This was their 50th anniversary, Patricia said. 3 years before he died. He wore the jacket that day, too. Said it was the only thing besides Dorothy that had been with him through everything. Rachel wiped her eyes. What happened to them?
Cancer got Uncle Robert in 2020, pancreatic. He went pretty quick, which was maybe a blessing.
Aunt Dorothy just kind of fell apart after that. They'd never been apart more than a few days their whole marriage. She developed dementia about a year later. We think it was the grief, honestly. Her mind just couldn't handle him being gone. Patricia closed the album. She passed in 2022. Near the end, she didn't remember any of us. But sometimes she'd ask for Robert, say she was waiting for him to come home. They sat in silence for a moment. The coffee shop buzzed with conversation around them, but their table felt like its own quiet world. After they died, we had to clean out their house. Patricia continued. It was so hard going through everything. My cousins and I, we tried to keep what mattered and donate the rest. We must have donated this jacket without checking the pockets. I can't believe we almost lost this note. But you didn't lose it, Rachel said. It found its way back. Patricia looked at her with such gratitude. Because of you, you didn't have to do any of this. You could have just kept the jacket. Thrown the note away. But you cared enough to search? I had to, Rachel said simply. It felt important. Patricia reached across the table and squeezed Rachel's hand. You gave me something I thought was gone forever. A piece of their story, proof of how much they loved each other. She looked down at the note still in her other hand. This is going to mean everything to my kids, to my cousins, to everyone who loved them. I'm just glad I could help. They talked for another hour. Patricia told more stories. About how Robert taught her to ride a bike. How Dorothy made the best apple pie. How their house was always full of people and laughter. Eventually, Patricia had to leave. She had a long drive back to Seattle. She packed up the photo album and carefully placed the jacket in a bag she'd brought. Before she left, she hugged Rachel again. Thank you, really. You'll never know what this means. Rachel watched her walk to her car, carrying that jacket like the treasure it was. And sitting there alone at that coffee shop table, Rachel felt something shift inside her. She'd been so focused on her own problems lately. The divorce, the money troubles, the feeling that her life was falling apart, but this reminded her that there was still good in the world, still love that lasted, still kindness between strangers. It reminded her why any of it mattered at all. Rachel thought that would be the end of it. She'd found the family, returned the note, and that was that. A good deed done. Story over. Except it wasn't over. The next morning, her phone started buzzing before she even got out of bed. Text messages, emails, notifications lighting up her screen like fireworks. Patricia had posted about their meeting on Facebook. She'd shared photos of the jacket, the note, and some of the pictures from the album. She'd written a long post about Uncle Robert and Aunt Dorothy, about their love story, about how a stranger named Rachel had cared enough to search for them. The post had been shared thousands of times overnight. Rachel scrolled through the comments, her coffee getting cold on the nightstand. People were crying. People were sharing their own stories about lost loved ones and found treasures. Veterans were commenting, thanking her for honoring Robert's memory. People who'd never met any of them were saying they felt like they knew Robert and Dorothy now. One comment stuck with Rachel. It was from a woman who said, "This reminds me that love doesn't just disappear when people die. It stays in objects, in memories, in strangers who care enough to do the right thing." Rachel read that comment 3 times. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Is this Rachel? The one who found the jacket? A man's voice, older, warm. Yes, that's me. This is Frank. Robert Hansen was my best friend. We served together in Vietnam. Rachel sat up straighter. Oh my God. Really? Really? Saw Patricia's post this morning. I can't tell you what this means to me. His voice cracked a little. Bobby and we went through hell over there. That jacket, that note from Dorothy, he showed it to me 100 times. When things got bad, when we thought we weren't going to make it, he'd pull out that note and read it. Said it was his armor. Did you stay in touch? After the war? Every week until he died. Called each other every Sunday morning for 50 years. Sometimes we'd talk for 2 minutes, sometimes 2 hours. Didn't matter. We just needed to check in, you know? Make sure the other guy was still okay. Frank told Rachel stories. About how Robert saved his life once during a firefight. About how they made it home when so many others didn't. About Robert's wedding to Dorothy, where Frank was the best man. About watching Robert's kids grow up. About family barbecues and fishing trips. After Bobby died, I didn't know what to do with myself on Sunday mornings. Frank said quietly. Still pick up the phone sometimes before I remember. They talked for almost an hour. When they finally hung up, Rachel just sat there holding her phone, feeling the weight of all these connections. This jacket, this note, it was like a stone thrown into water. The ripples just kept spreading. That afternoon, a local TV news crew called. They wanted to do a story. Rachel almost said no. She didn't want attention. This wasn't about her. But then she thought about Robert and Dorothy. Thought about their story. How many people knew about couples like them? People who loved each other through war and time and everything life threw at them. Maybe their story deserved to be told. She said yes. The interview aired 2 days later. They filmed Rachel at the thrift store where she'd found the jacket. They interviewed Patricia. They even got Frank on the phone. The segment was only 4 minutes long, but it was beautiful. That night, Rachel's phone exploded again. News outlets were picking up the story. First local stations, then regional ones. Someone from Good Morning America sent an email asking if she'd be willing to come on the show. Rachel felt overwhelmed. This had gone way bigger than she ever imagined. But the messages that really got to her were the personal ones. People emailing to say they'd gone and checked their own thrift store finds. A woman in Texas found an old love letter in a book and tracked down the family. A guy in Ohio found war medals in a donated box and returned them to a veteran's children. A teenager in California found an old diary and spent weeks finding the author's grandchildren. Rachel's simple act of kindness was inspiring other people to do the same. That was the part that made her cry. Not the news coverage or the attention. The fact that people were seeing what she did and thinking, I could do that too. I could care about someone else's story. About a week after the coffee shop meeting, Patricia called again. I have a favor to ask, she said. And please say no if it's too much. But the family's getting together next weekend. All of Robert and Dorothy's kids and grandkids and great-grandkids. We do it every year around this time. Kind of a memorial thing. And everyone wants to meet you. Would you come? It's in Seattle, so I know it's a drive, but we'd love to have you. Rachel didn't even hesitate. I'll be there. The following Saturday, Rachel drove up to Seattle. Her car was old and the heater didn't work great, but she didn't mind. She wore the thrift store jacket she'd been planning to return. The one she'd bought for herself after giving Robert's jacket to Patricia. It wasn't as nice, but it kept her warm. Patricia's house was in a quiet neighborhood with big trees and Halloween decorations still up in some yards. Cars lined both sides of the street. Rachel could hear laughter and voices before she even knocked on the door. Patricia answered, pulling Rachel into an immediate hug. You made it! Come in, come in. Everyone's dying to meet you. The house was packed. 3 generations of family, all talking and laughing and sharing food. Kids ran around playing tag. Older folks sat on couches swapping stories. The smell of roasted chicken and fresh bread filled the air. Patricia walked Rachel through the house, introducing her to everyone. Robert and Dorothy's 3 children were there. Their 7 grandchildren, 4 great-grandchildren, including a baby who couldn't have been more than 6 months old. This is Rachel, Patricia kept saying. The one who found the note. Each person thanked her, hugged her, told her what it meant to them. Robert's oldest daughter, Carol, grabbed Rachel's hand. You gave us back a piece of them we didn't even know we'd lost. That note, knowing my dad carried it with him, knowing how much my mom loved him, it makes them feel close again. In the living room, they'd set up a display. The jacket was there hanging on a special stand. The note was framed now, positioned right next to it. Around them were photos from the album Patricia had shown Rachel, plus other pictures the family had contributed. Robert and Dorothy's whole life laid out for everyone to see. A little boy, maybe 7 or 8, stood in front of the display. Is that Great-Grandpa Robert's jacket? He asked his mom. It is, sweetie. Did he really wear it in a war? He did, and it kept him safe so he could come home and have our family. The boy stared at the jacket with wide eyes like he was looking at something magical. Dinner was chaotic and wonderful. Rachel sat between 2 of Robert's grandchildren, who told her stories about their grandfather. How he built them a treehouse, how he taught them to fish, how he made terrible jokes and laughed at all of them himself. He talked about the war sometimes, one of them said. Not a lot, but sometimes. He said he got through it by thinking about Grandma. Said she was his reason for everything. After dinner, Frank showed up. Rachel recognized him immediately from the warmth in his eyes when Patricia introduced them. He was 82, walked with a cane, but his handshake was still firm. So you're the one, he said, smiling. The guardian angel. I just found a jacket, Rachel said. You found a lot more than that, Frank said. You found respect, memory, love. You reminded all of us that the small things matter. That people matter. Later, when things had quieted down and some of the family had left, Rachel found herself standing in front of the jacket display again. Patricia came up beside her. Thank you for coming, Patricia said. It means the world to everyone. Thank you for inviting me. This whole thing, it's been incredible. You know what Robert used to say? Patricia smiled. He said that Dorothy's note didn't just bring him home from war. It reminded him every day why life was worth living, why love was worth fighting for. Rachel looked at the note behind the glass. Those simple words written so long ago. Come home safe to me, and he did. He came home and built a whole beautiful life. Had kids and grandkids and great-grandkids, all because someone loved him enough to put hope in his pocket. I needed this, Rachel said quietly, finding that note, meeting your family. I've been going through a rough time, feeling like nothing matters much anymore. But this reminded me that it does. That we're all connected. That love is real. Patricia put her arm around Rachel's shoulders. Maybe you were supposed to find it. Maybe it was meant to find you too. On the drive home that night, Rachel thought about that. About how a random trip to a thrift store had changed her entire outlook on life. How strangers had become friends. How a love story from 50 years ago had given her hope for her own future. She didn't know what came next for her. But for the first time in months, she felt ready to find out. 3 months later, Rachel found herself back at the same Goodwill where everything had started. It was January now. Cold and gray. The kind of Portland winter day where the sky felt like it was sitting right on top of you. But Rachel didn't mind. She actually looked forward to her Saturday morning trips to the thrift store now. They'd become a ritual. She wasn't looking for anything in particular today. Just browsing. Running her hands along the racks, checking pockets out of habit. Most of the time she found nothing. Lint, old receipts. Once a stick of gum still in the wrapper. But sometimes she found something that mattered. Like the photo she'd discovered 2 weeks ago in an old purse. A black and white picture of a young couple at prom. Class of 1955 written on the back in faded pencil. Rachel had posted it online, and within 3 days the woman's daughter had contacted her. The woman in the photo had passed away, but her daughter cried when she saw it. Said she'd never seen a picture of her mother that young before, or the Bronze Star medal Rachel found in the pocket of an old coat. That one had taken some real detective work, but she eventually tracked down the veteran's grandson. He'd driven 6 hours to pick it up, said his grandfather would be buried with it just like he'd wanted. Rachel had become kind of known for this. People started sending her things they found. Old letters, photographs, medals, anything with a story attached. She'd created a Facebook page called Found Stories, where she posted about items and tried to find their owners. It had over 10,000 followers now. She never expected any of this. Didn't set out to become the person who returned lost treasures to grieving families. It just happened. One jacket, one note, one decision to care, and suddenly her whole life had shifted. Her phone buzzed. A text from Patricia. Happy Saturday. How's the treasure hunting going? Rachel smiled and typed back. Nothing yet today. How's everyone? Good. Frank's coming for dinner tomorrow. Wish you could be here. Rachel and Patricia talked at least once a week now, sometimes more. They'd become real friends, not just two people connected by a jacket. Patricia had even come down to Portland last month, and they'd spent the whole day together, just walking around, drinking coffee, talking about life. Frank sent Rachel birthday cards. Robert and Dorothy's children friended her on Facebook and commented on her posts. The whole family had sort of adopted her in a way. It was nice. Better than nice. After her divorce, Rachel's world had felt so small. Now it felt wide open. A woman walked past Rachel with a cart full of kids' clothes. A little girl sat in the cart, maybe 4 years old, playing with a stuffed elephant. Rachel moved down the rack to give them room and found herself in front of the winter coats again, right where she'd been standing when she found Robert's jacket. She ran her hand along the olive green fabrics out of instinct, even though she knew that exact jacket was long gone. It was hanging in Patricia's house now in a place of honor. The family had decided to keep it there instead of in storage or a museum. They wanted it where people could see it, where they could tell its story. Rachel checked a few pockets anyway. Empty. Empty. A wadded-up tissue. Then her fingers touched something in a brown leather jacket. Paper again. Her heart did that little jump it always did now when she found something. She pulled it out. An envelope sealed with a name written on the front. To my daughter, Lily. Rachel's breath caught. This was different. Not a lost thing, but an undelivered thing. Someone had meant to give this to their daughter and never did. She looked inside the jacket for a name. On the tag, written in marker, Be Right. Rachel bought the jacket. $15. She sat in her car in the parking lot and posted photos of the envelope on her Found Stories page, being careful not to open it. That wasn't hers to read. Found this sealed letter in a jacket pocket, she typed. Looking for the Wright family, specifically someone named Lily whose parent may have been B. Wright. Please share. She hit post and started her car. She'd done what she could do. Now she'd wait and see. That night, Rachel was making dinner when her phone rang. The number had a California area code. Hello? Hi, is this Rachel? From the Found Stories page, a young woman's voice shaking a little. Yes, that's me. I think you found my mom's letter. To me, I'm Lily Wright. Rachel sat down at her kitchen table. Tell me about it. Lily's story came out in a rush. Her mother, Beverly Wright, had died suddenly 2 years ago. Heart attack. She was only 56. Lily had been 23 at the time, just graduated from college. We donated most of her clothes, Lily said. I couldn't stand having them in the house. Everything smelled like her perfume, and it just hurt too much, you know? I know. But I always wondered if she'd left me a letter or something. Like something to read after she was gone. I looked everywhere. Her desk, her closet, her car. I thought maybe she hadn't, and that was okay, but I always kind of hoped. And now there might be one, Rachel said softly. Can I come get it? I'm in Sacramento, but I can drive up tomorrow. I need to read it. I need to know what she wanted to tell me. They made plans to meet the next day at the same coffee shop where Rachel had met Patricia. Same table by the window. Rachel was starting to think of it as her table. Lily arrived right on time. She was small and dark-haired with her mother's eyes, she said. She looked nervous and excited and scared all at once. Rachel handed her the envelope. Lily held it like it might break. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely open it. Rachel almost offered to help, but this felt like something Lily needed to do herself. Inside was a single sheet of paper, covered in handwriting. Lily read it silently, tears streaming down her face. She didn't make a sound, just let them fall. When she finished, she looked up at Rachel. She wrote this right before I left for college, 4 years ago. She must have put it in this jacket and forgot about it. What does it say? Rachel asked gently. If you want to share. Lily wiped her eyes. She said she was proud of me, that she knew I'd do amazing things with my life, that even when she wasn't around anymore, she'd still be cheering for me. She said to be brave and kind and to remember that love doesn't end just because someone dies. Lily's voice broke. She knew. Somehow she knew she wouldn't be here forever, and she wanted to make sure I knew she loved me. They sat together for a long time. Lily talked about her mother, about how close they were, about how hard the last 2 years had been, navigating her 20s without her mom to call, about how many times she'd wished she could hear her mother's voice one more time. This is her voice, Lily said, holding the letter. This is what I needed. Before she left, Lily hugged Rachel tight. Thank you. You didn't have to do this. You could have just thrown the letter away or ignored it. But you cared enough to find me. After Lily drove away, Rachel sat in her car and thought about the last few months. About Robert and Dorothy. About Patricia and Frank. About all the families she'd helped reconnect with pieces of their past. About Lily and her mother's letter. She thought about her own mother, still alive and well, living 3 states away. When was the last time Rachel had called her? Really talked to her, not just texted? Rachel pulled out her phone and dialed. Rachel? Honey, is everything okay? Her mother always assumed phone calls meant emergencies. Everything's fine, Mom. I just wanted to hear your voice and tell you I love you. They talked for an hour. About nothing and everything. About Rachel's life and her mother's garden and the weather and the new restaurant in her mom's town. Normal stuff. Beautiful stuff. When they hung up, Rachel felt full in a way she hadn't in years. She drove home slowly, taking the long way, thinking about how strange life was. How you could go into a thrift store looking for a winter coat and come out with a purpose. How a forgotten note in a pocket could change everything. Rachel had spent so much time after her divorce feeling lost. Feeling like her story was over, like the best parts of her life were behind her. But that wasn't true. The best parts were just different now. She pulled into her apartment parking lot and sat for a minute before going inside. Through her rearview mirror, she could see the thrift store jacket she'd bought for herself hanging in the back seat, the one she wore now instead of Robert's. It wasn't as nice as his had been. The zipper stuck sometimes and one of the pockets had a small hole, but it was hers. And someday, maybe decades from now, someone else would find it in a thrift store. Maybe they'd find something in the pockets. Maybe they'd wonder about the person who wore it. Rachel hoped whoever that person was, they'd know she'd had a good life. That she'd loved deeply and lost and found her way back. That she'd learned kindness from strangers and paid it forward every chance she got. That she'd learned love doesn't disappear. It just changes forms. It becomes memories and stories and notes tucked in pockets, waiting for the right person to find them. Rachel grabbed her jacket from the back seat and headed inside. She had emails to answer, more found items to research, more families to help. But first, she was going to write her own note. Something for whoever found her things someday. Something that said she was here, she mattered, she loved. Just in case someone out there needed to know that love survived, that people cared, that every single story, no matter how ordinary it seemed, was worth remembering. She sat down at her kitchen table, pulled out a piece of paper, and began to write.